in the book Nomen Substantivum, because people have also been tricked by colored people among our own, thinking that you have to go to the de facto court venues to correct your name, etc., which actually puts it back into their false jurisdiction. This is why people must know first, when you're looking at any of this information, is that the people who have you been just traditionally looking up or looking at as government are not government. And if you don't absorb that fact, you're going to continue to process incorrectly. This is again why you must activate and organize socially and politically among yourselves. And your proper venue for communicating with them is a consulate venue. That's a fact. And it's not something that we thought of. That's the established rule of law.
Here's the question. This last one. Can a private member association protect your estate?
No, not, yes and no in a sense. Because you want to be private, but they have assumed you to be public property because they've already made you as stock through marriage certificates, birth certificates, or car registrations, marriage licenses, etc., Social Security, CUSIC numbers, all of these instrumentalities, and even with their census, they're trying to rebond the people. This is why they're even sending censuses out to get you to agree to be a part of their defunct organization, so they can start creating bonds again and selling them again. That's really the bondage. Now, the fact that now whether you cooperate with them or not, or rebond yourself, or otherwise put yourself back in bondage voluntarily out of ignorance, helps them. And I suggest that you start recognizing the established fact that we opened up from the beginning of this session. United States Corporation has been dissolved. All the offices, all the departments, and all of the persons claiming to be government are dissolved. But you, the people of the land, are the true sovereign. Take your place, learn the fundamental principles, and start organizing among yourselves and reclaiming your lost estate and your rights. They have none to give you. They have only operations that steal them. That's why it has always been said about the hybrid Europeans operating falsely as Americans. They're living off your virtues, i.e., they're exploiting, they're vampires.
Well, I think
it's harsh, but it's just the truth. And until we start dealing with the truth, as uncomfortable as it is, we will suffer. And I know some things that we say are uncomfortable.
Someone wanted to know if applying for a job rebonds you.
Not necessarily. Applying for a job in not proper person bonds you. However, by international law, they're obligated to have access to the resources. And this is back to why we keep telling people, activate the restoration of Article 3, consular court venue, which has been neutralized by sellouts among us, particularly since Dwight D. Eisenhower, when they start promoting their Negro marching civil rights leader guys under the guise of liberating our people. And our people didn't know it was a form of rebonding our people. And that's a fact. So don't get caught up in personalities.
Well, I want to thank you, Grand Sheik, for all of this, again, great information. And that there's some question here from me to update the October 29th, which we've just discussed that we're going to change that date to the 30th, which is a Saturday instead of Friday, which will give us an earlier start time. So we were going to do a 2-day event, Friday and Saturday, but we're going to move it to just the 30th and start around, open the doors around 11 and start at noon.
So that people have, so we can have people have travel time.
Travel time.
So it's mainly with the consideration of making sure that people after the affairs are over, that you have good travel time,
And
that
then
you're
it
not late in it.
won't be as late. So
Because
we'll
last time we were about 3 o'clock in the
2
morning.
o'clock in the morning.
No, it's closer to 3 o'clock in the morning.
So that'll be coming out soon. But this circle the 30th, which is a Saturday, the Sabbath, instead of Friday the 29th, and we'll get more details because now we're gonna try to get some more that you might want to see to be involved. And so we just want to get more information. But the 30th of October is our new date for that. Um, we want to thank you. I have a little promo.
Yes, do the promo, please.
Yeah, so I have a little promo that I want to play for my channel, which is Dr. G's official. I want to thank everyone who went out and went over there to Dr. G's official and what did you do? You signed up. You registered for my channel. Thank you so much. And now I'm looking for some really great guests. And so the other day I was just sitting here at the computer and I just started talking off the cuff. So it was just very raw and very rough, but I talked for about 4 minutes. And Grand Sheik, you think I should share this with this? I want to share this since there's so many folk on here because you might be one of my guests because a lot of you have giftings and so forth. Well, look, let me stop talking. Let me just pull it up here on there and
Successful presidential campaign of William Henry Harrison and boosted by the subsequent founding of his Tribune newspaper, also became heavily involved with the aforesaid Whiggamore Party, which was later referred to as the Whigs, WHIGS. It shall be noted that this hybrid European dominated political order and radical party thereafter was and almost always spoken about, known, or called by its shortened form, the Whigs. Now, these are some of the facts known of the man Horace Greeley and of his influences and activities. Few notations are given so as to assist the reader or observer as an ancillary in maintaining a reasonably close or more accurate view and timely concept about, and on his politics and his opinions, etc. Number one, Horace Greeley was the founder of the Republican Party. Two, Horace Greeley initiated an investigation of the United States Congress, of which he was a participant. He was an active member of the House of Representatives for 3 months. However, his unrelenting candor, uncompromised outspokenness, and generally principled character made him less than popular with many of his colleagues. Three, Horace Greeley gave strong and affirmative support to Abraham Lincoln's candidacy for the presidency of the United States. Four, Horace Greeley urged President Lincoln to end slavery that passionately suggested pressure came from Greeley even before Lincoln himself demonstrated evidence in showing a willingness to act upon that institutionalized and banal form of human trafficking, peonage, and social corruption. Five, Horace Greeley was one of the most prominent active political figures among the hybrid European sons at North America. He strongly promoted the adopted practice among the sons and daughters of European descent to take for themselves the social status title of quote unquote white people, from which they were formerly excluded. Thus, Greeley was a key propagator of promoting the practice of the occupying hybrid Europeans adopting the practice of arbitrarily taking on the free white person's social status. Thus, the hybrid Europeans have since 1854 been socially trading places in the social structure with the politically and economically weakened Aboriginal noble Moors, the sovereign rulers of the land, America. In context with the social, economic, and political events involving and surrounding Horace Greeley, the transitional times and undoubtedly reflective of the concerns of other European sons and daughters, One must be cognizant of the prevailing cultural state influenced by some of the long lasting and harsh standards set forth and institutionalized via King Hammurabi Bey's Code of Law. Keep in mind the general the general disconnect maintained among the masses due to the inquisitor operations of massive book burnings and other extreme forms of literary destruction, as formerly stated, the true history of the Moabite Moorish nation was being systematically suppressed, distorted, veiled, and hidden. This suppressed chronology is known and kept in silence by some, unknown by others, and in the same instance, preserved by way of secret societies such as Freemasonry, Knights of Columbus, and Daughters of the American Revolution, etc. And much of the true history of the world and of the aboriginal natural peoples is void of exposure to the general public and to the masses. This absence of revelation is not by accident, nor by oversight. Therefore, the disassociate conditions reflective of the natural peoples, as caused by the absence of those many veiled truths, has spawned many unnecessary schisms and hatreds. A general lack of knowledge about the true yet suppressed history of and about the natural peoples of the land of the Western Hemisphere and of the world also promotes disassociation by creating and encouraging the very static mental state of mind fostered by the artificially cultivated fraudisms, and the result has spawned a damaging promulgation of ignorance, of hatred, of meanness, and of other forms of lower self activities. The Whigmore Party, the Whigs, being a highly influential part of the evolving United States body politics history at North America, was one of the two dominant and active hybrid European political parties having prominent political operations during the middle 1830s and up to the middle 1850s. The Whigmore Party grew out of the defunct National Republican Party and was formed mostly by that party's former members. And this formation was on or about the year 1834. Now, these Whigs members, in unity with others, were staunchly opposed to those British peoples, the Tories, and against the politics expressed via the Democratic Party. The conscience Whigs, the anti-slavery Whigs. The philosophical split or schism that developed within the Whigs Party due to the internal socialization and political conflictions became so strong as to cause the Whigs to become almost separate. And these two factions became known as the conscience Whigs on the one side and the cotton Whigs on as the other. And the conscience Whigs were known to be those European sons, daughters, and associate supporters among the Whigs who were in staunch opposition to slavery, imposed peonage, and human trafficking. Other sympathizers supporting liberties should also be taken into consideration, and the conscience Whigs were also generally active in organizations formed against the politically practiced and inherent escheatage, vassalage, and the peonage characteristics attributed to such human trafficking activities. The others, the Cotton Whigs, the pro-slavery Whigs. The more inhumane side of the Whigs Party was known as the Cotton Whigs and consisted of those members of the Whigs Party who were supportive of and politically promoting slavery, promoting human trafficking, and promoting peonage. Therefore, in your continued erudition on the expanded studies about the Whigmore Party, the Whigs, and the related and associated subjects, take some time to review these issues and note the contradictions as evidenced within the parties. Nevertheless, all neophytes and scholars and adepts must cognate that whenever one is reflecting upon the social and political motives of the hybrid European sons and daughters doing business at or administrating government at the North Gate and across the planet, one must also strongly consider and be cognizant of King Hammurabi Bey's code of law. Why? Because all these hybrid Europeans know that they are hybrids and are always cognizant of the codes. These are, in fact, these are facts, even if they do not speak of them openly. And these ancient codes are primal point of social and political reference, and are known and studied by those who study jurisprudence and by those who are in operative government, legislate or who legislate the rules and the laws of the planet Earth, Midgard. Even in these days, while not often spoken about publicly or openly, Hammurabi's codes, above all, were and are of absolute influence. And this immovable fact is mentally, politically, and analytically placed and fixed into the time period, social context. One must observe the subtle pressures of the codes in the thought processes of the Whigs and use one's knowledge about the codes as a social political backdrop. One is deemed through, with hesitance, though with hesitance to relate to the not so subtle yet established residual effects of the harsh parts of the codes as related to the declaration of the children of Israel, to slavery under the Moorish nation, and with reason and with discipline view these histories with objective analysis, knowing of the suppressed nature surrounding the same. Also note that many of the Southern members of the Whigmore party had sided with the Unionists in the conflict and in matters involving the secession of the Southern states from the Union and other related activities and issues also broadened the breaches manifesting within the party during 1850. Now, the controversial, foul, and corrupt conditions and pressing questions caused by and involved with slavery and its social, economic, and political effects caused by exacerbated a split within the Whigs party. And most influential in that split or schism, which marked the party, was heated arguments, hostilities, and destructive activities which took place in the multiple places in other territories at North America. And of particular note, and a very impacting interest upon the Whigs was known as the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Kansas-Nebraska Act, mark that down to put it in context with the politics that you're dealing with today. And one is reminded to expand one's studies on the nature of the controversy surrounding that subject and of the associated affairs conjoined to them. Therefore, research what is called the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And out from the heated and terse philosophical and political split came the creation of not only the noted schism within the Whigs party, but also the development and formation of another party. That party that evolved from that political disjointment and disharmony is now known as the Republican Party. Keep that in mind. Now, the Republican Party in general was supporter of constitutional principles and treaty enforcement. The Cotton Whigs were mostly in favor of deceptively overthrowing the Republic and eschewing the properties of the Moors and tagging the Moors as Negroes, Blacks, Indians, etc., to remove them from authority in superior position of consular court venues of the treaties and the Constitution in order to supplant the peoples of the land and enforce the unum sanctum operations. And this is where the misinformation of the fake race argument has its origin that has been promoted to this very day to cover up the real activities of the Whigamores and the unum sanctum operations and the doctrines of discovery. This is why you see whenever there was a case of Aboriginal people in conflict with their land, that the hybrid Europeans set up the Bureau of Indian Affairs in order to assume jurisdiction over the affairs of the Moors who agreed to be called Indians to under the guise of retaining their sovereign rights to the treaties and to the land. And under that guise of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the hybrid Europeans would systematically, over the centuries, steal the land, steal the resources, and that practice has continued to this very day and is generally referred to as gentrification, i.e., there's the Whigamore parties and there's your politics that you see taking place to this very day. And in reference to people who may not understand the politics, this is why you see much of the opposition from the Cottonwigs, which you know as the Democratic Party, against Donald Trump, who ran for office under the guise of the Republican Party, who is also against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has been operationally making efforts to restore the constitutions and the treaty enforcements. And this is part of the conflict that's going on to this very day. And it's absolutely Whigamores battling each other over the Moorish estate to this very day. So understand the politics and don't be fooled by people who are distracting you to other issues, including the fake race argument and the fake Black Lives Matter paradigm, which they've been using to pit people against each other and then conquer them after they destroy their own communities. At the time, I will yield the floor, Dr. Naylor. Any comments that you have?
Let me see.
Also, for any interjections of yourself.
Somebody put in, noted the names, conscience or conscience and cotton.
Conscience wigs and cotton wigs. Those are the two parties that have been disguised in the modern day, not so much disguised, but that you see for pretty much in the monopoly operations at North America, known to the general public as the Republican Party, which is the conscience wigs. That's CONSCIENCE wigs. And the cotton wigs.
It's written almost like conscience.
That's what it is.
And so are they implying
conscience
that they have more,
meaning that the conscience wigs were the wigs that were more honorable to the Constitution and the treaties. The cotton wigs were among members of the Roman Curia and secret members of the Circle Church and the Chancery, who, in fact, were among those who actually plotted and succeeded in the assassination of Lincoln in order to overthrow the Republic.
Well, I think it is ironic that the what became the Demo Party was called they call themselves Cotton Wigs, when according to his story there was picking cotton.
That's what it symbolizes. In other words, now keep in mind, because people also need to really
a lot of symbolism exists.
It is. And people need to understand that one of the things that the hybrid Europeans were doing were stealing the Bonnevilles and murdering the Aboriginal people. Like a lot of times when people see pictures of
Bonnevilles with those small ships.
Bonnevilles were some of these places that you've been calling plantations that weren't really European hybrids. They were actually Moors on the land. A lot of times they'll show you pictures and say that those people were slaves.
And they were the owners.
not.
Yeah,
they were the owners.
Right.
And so the whole history has really been corrupted. And it's unfortunate because many of our people have been following that line for many generations.
Well, that's why I said, you know, they would when once they were able to take pictures. I can see them coming through the various areas, and I'm talking about the, you know, the Europeans, and said, "Hey, why don't you line up so I can take a picture? Oh, you get all the family together." And they all now they work their own
And some
fields
of them were just simply pictures from archives of families whatsoever, and then presented
as
in a false paradigm.
because weren't there? I mean, I heard Scott McKay say that we're over 2,500. He didn't say melanated, but he said black slave owners
Sure.
during that time.
See, this is why now this is back to Hammurabi Bay. See, this is the unfortunate situation that's happening at North America and what's happening in the world. By the hybrid Europeans, when they overthrew the Moorish Empire, and then keep in mind, we lost America before we lost Germany and Iberia. You know, that must be understood. And the reconstruction of the history has to do with many of the hybrid Europeans taking credit for servitude activities that actually was reversed. You know, was not, because slave is really an identity of the Slavic peoples. Now it's been used connotatively in contemporary construction of history, but it is improperly used. It's actually Slovakian. And so the slave in general applied to hybrid Europeans, although it is used contemporarily and wrongly in history to as from a connotative perspective to designate people who have been put into servitude or into peonage. And so another part of the unfortunate result of reconstructed history is that the hybrid Europeans have been credited with a lot of criminal enslavement that was actually themselves not in reverse. And so, again, when people know the real history, the guilt of human suffering is on both sides. It's not like one-sided the way they've been telling it. And furthermore, many hybrid Europeans, when held in servitude, were also listed as blacks and Negroes. That's another thing that's been misrepresented. And also, one of your largest biggest slaveholders at the Maghreb or at North America was a Moor.
Anthony Johnson.
Yes. You know, and it's and for us to fix this social economic problem that we have today, that's been exported around the world. The truth must be told in order for us to fix things. Meaning that if you're not honest about or truthful about the true chronology and history of the walk of man, particularly in North America, we're not going to correct anything. And we must take responsibility, all of us, for the enforcement of the treaties and the Constitution for the United States, which comes from honesty confederation. That comes from us. Those principles are Moorish principles. They're fatwa. And you know, even when you hear people talk about fatwa, they'll talk it in a negative when actually the Constitution for the United States comes from fatwa law, come from the Moors. It didn't come from the hybrid Europeans. You know, and people need to understand. This is why it's important for people to understand or to look into American history in context with the Napoleonic Wars, because it was actually during those wars as they took over the monarchies of Iberia, i.e., Europe. Much of the corruption that we're experiencing today, they've been using dark magic, Babylonian magic, to rule the world ruthlessly.
Speaking of dark magic and Babylonian magic,
Yeah.
you know, I'm reading Synchronicity and the Seventh Seal.
Oh, Peter Moon, yeah.
Peter Moon. And so, getting into it, I realized that dark magic was being used because that's what's in here, as well as Noble Drew Ali in here. So you got Ron L. Hubbard, you got Aleister Crowley, you got Jack Parsons. Yeah,
you'll see.
You got the Amshat and the Ashram.
Yes.
Y'all, I'm telling you about a book that y'all need to go and get so we can all talk about this book. Got to be read. But can I share? Something
freely because I want to just make this note.
Okay.
With you, Dr.
Go ahead.
You will see. Remember, like Noble Drew Ali said, he's going to make the European tell the truth.
Yes.
Now, and as we mentioned over the years, as the middle class of the hybrid Europeans have been thrown under the bus as true history starts coming about. And the truth about the Whiggamore Party operations, they just don't say Whiggamores. They'll just say the Democrats and the Republicans. Understand you're talking about the Whiggamores. Mm-hmm. As this comes out and all the corruption that has taken place on the planet since the Napoleonic Wars, etc., they didn't expect to be thrown under the bus. And so they're starting to expose some of the real history. And logically, people who don't know a background, won't put it in context. But once you have some of the actual historical records, you can understand the Moorish Divine and National Movement. You can understand the motive of Noble Drew Ali. You can understand when Noble Drew Ali